The CFTC just made a huge move that could completely reshape crypto regulation in the United States. And if this goes the way it's looking right now, it could be absolutely massive for Binance. For the first time in years, there's a realistic pathway forming for regulated spot crypto trading in the US. And that suddenly puts the world's biggest exchange right back into the centre of the conversation. And that's exactly why we're taking a deeper look at Binance today. Because if the CFTC does become the primary regulator for crypto markets, this could change Binance's future entirely. After years of legal battles, fines, leadership changes, and political drama, Binance might actually be positioned better than most people realise. And the timing of this regulatory shift is incredibly interesting. Hi everyone, I'm Paula. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to unpack everything that's brought Binance to this moment, what Binance actually is today, how it rose to dominate the entire industry, the legal war that almost broke it, the leadership reshuffle, the Trump pardon, and now how this new CFTC approach could shape what happens next. None of this is financial advice. We're just trying to understand the bigger picture, because regulation is about to decide who wins, who loses, and who survives in this space. So let's start with where Binance sits right now. Even after everything that's happened, Binance is still the largest crypto exchange in the world by a mile. It handles close to half of all global spot trading volume, and its derivatives volume is enormous. But Binance isn't just an exchange, it's an entire ecosystem. There's BNB Chain, Trust Wallet, Launchpad, the NFT marketplace, various investment arms. It's almost a parallel financial system built around a single company. And it still insists it has no official headquarters, which has always been part of its identity and also part of its regulatory nightmare. Binance launched in 2017, founded by Changpeng Zhao, CZ, and He. They raised money through the BNB ICO and then grew faster than anyone expected. They moved quickly between jurisdictions, listed coins aggressively, offered ultra-low fees, and created a trading environment that felt faster and more professional than most competitors. By the time the 2020 and 2021 bull run arrived, Binance wasn't just big, it was the default place to trade crypto. But that kind of dominance attracts regulators. And between 2018 and 2023, the pressure on Binance built until it became impossible to ignore. The US accused Binance of serving American customers illegally, running an unlicensed money transmitting business, failing to maintain proper AML controls, breaching sanctions, and allowing billions to move through the platform with far too little oversight. In November 2023, it all culminated in a massive settlement. Binance pleaded guilty, paid over $4 billion in fines, agreed to a multi-year compliance monitorship, and pulled Binance.com out of the US market. CZ himself pleaded guilty, stepped down as CEO, and later served a 4-month prison sentence. That's where leadership changed. Binance appointed Richard Teng, a former regulator, as CEO, and more recently, He stepped into a formal co-CEO role. Binance strengthened its ties with the UAE, which has essentially become its political and financial home base. In other words, the Binance of today is something very different from the move fast and break things Binance of 2019. It's trying to become a compliant, institution-ready exchange that can survive long term. Then came the twist. In October 2025, Donald Trump issued a full presidential pardon for CZ. That pardon wiped the conviction from his record. It didn't undo the settlement or remove the monitorship obligations on Binance as a company, but it absolutely strengthened CZ's long-term influence as the major shareholder. It also tied Binance even closer to US politics, which adds an entirely new layer to the story. And now we circle back to the CFTC, because this is where things start to align in a very interesting way. In the last video, we talked about how the CFTC is stepping forward as the main regulator for crypto spot markets in the United States. This matters because the CFTC approaches crypto very differently from the SEC. They're more market-focused, more predictable, and far less aggressive with enforcement-first tactics. And for the first time in years, We're seeing a clear, realistic regulatory lane forming for exchanges that want to operate legally in the US. For Binance, this is huge. The biggest factor limiting Binance's global reach has been its inability to operate properly in the United States. But if the CFTC becomes the primary regulator and Binance continues reshaping itself into a compliant, transparent, institution-friendly exchange, then a pathway back into the US suddenly exists. Not tomorrow, and not easily, but realistically. And when you look at Binance's recent moves through that lens, the leadership changes, the compliance-heavy culture, the strategic shift towards the UAE, it all starts to look like preparation for a regulated future rather than a rebellious past. If the CFTC solidifies its position, this could actually help Binance grow again because it gives them legitimacy and a framework to operate under. The timing is fascinating. Now, before we go deeper into who controls Binance today, let me quickly explain something I get asked constantly: where I personally trade. Binance is obviously the giant, and most people start there because the liquidity is incredible. But for me personally, I actually only use 2 exchanges these days: BloFin and Bitunix. Some of you spotted that I mentioned Bitunix recently, and that's simply because I get so many questions about which platforms I actually place my trades on. Bitunix is great if you enjoy derivatives trading, and they've offered my community some really solid bonuses. But the exchange I've been using most often recently is BloFin. It feels clean, modern and fast. The layout is simple, and it doesn't have that overwhelming, chaotic feeling that some of the mega exchanges can have. And what I really like is that BloFin is building a proper long-term campaign specifically for our community. Consistent deposit rewards, volume rewards, and real trading tournaments based on PnL and volume. It's refreshing to see an exchange focusing on something long-term rather than dropping a quick promo. So if you prefer a platform that feels a bit calmer and more streamlined, I'll leave the link below. But BloFin is the one I've naturally found myself using most lately. Anyway, let's get back to Binance. So who actually controls Binance today? It's not a simple answer. CZ still holds enormous influence because he's the majority owner, even though he's no longer CEO. Her plays a huge role internally and has been there since day one. Richard Ten is the regulatory-friendly leadership figure, guiding Binance into its compliant era. The UAE provides political and financial stability that Binance relies on. And the other side, US regulators still maintain oversight through the monitorship agreements. Binance is now so large and so interconnected that control no longer sits in one place. It's shared across founders, executives, governments, and regulators. And what does that mean for everyday traders? Binance still has the deepest liquidity in the world, which is why people continue to use it. But counterparty risk always exists with any centralized exchange. And the political landscape matters more now than ever. So after everything we've talked about, do you think the CFTC opens the door for a Binance comeback in the United States? Or do you think that chapter is already closed? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if you want to go deeper into conversations like this with people who live and breathe crypto every day, it's exactly why we created the Crypto Wolfpack. It's a community where normal people can connect, read charts together, talk macro, share news, get signals and join daily live streams. And if you want to know the exact strategies we use to make money in both the bull market and the bear market, we've made a completely free course for you. The link for the pack and the link for the course is in the description below. Make sure you're subscribed, hit like if you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.